Certainly, Captain. What do you need to know? What aspect of history, Captain? Which group of aliens? Which species? When I was flying combat missions along the Corward Front, there was nothing we feared more than the Androsith hit-and-run squadron. Their blazer ships were more than a match for our cruisers, so we stayed clear of Eta Vulpeculae, their home star. In addition, I think each of us aboard the ship knew deep down in our hearts that the Androsith had a damn good reason for hating us. Our grandparents had kept them as slaves for nearly 50 years. The Starship Far Voyager under the command of Captain Jeffrey L. Rand encountered the Vux near Beta Mira. Although the details are hazy, it's generally accepted that Rand offended the Vux starship commander with an inadvertent insult. I still have nightmares about those spiders taking me prisoner, using me as one of their 6 sacrifices to Dogar and Kazon, their twin gods of destruction and torment. Those guys were almost as scary as the Androsith to those of us in Deep Space Patrol. Their Avenger ships could appear out of nowhere, melt a cruiser down to slag in seconds. Luckily for us, the bulk of the Ilrath fleet was thrown against the Genjesu and the Myrnaherm. The Mycons are hard to get a handle on. In fact, I'm not sure any human has ever had a real conversation with a Mycon. What we know of them, we've learned from their corpses, which, I may add, have a nasty habit of coming back to life when thawed out from a decompression quick freeze. Mycon ships seem to expend a significant amount of energy on life support. This is probably because the Mycon only thrive in temperatures close to the melting point of lead. As far as we know, the Mycon are the only race to actively seek out the ur-quan in order to become combat slaves. Our enemy is cunning, relentless, and possesses technology superior to all, but perhaps that found aboard your starship. The ur-quan are born, live, and die for one purpose only: the subjugation of all other intelligent life in the galaxy. Why? I don't know. They'd probably have an easier time just destroying intelligence, but they're very careful not to use more force than is necessary to achieve their victim's submission. I'd sure like to know what made those wormy bastards as twisted as they are, and I'd like to know why they keep on the move, never stopping longer than it takes to enslave whomever they find. Imagine facing a cowardly, mobile clam armed with a howitzer, and you've got a good idea of what it's like dealing with a Spathi. Although they tend to avoid battles as much as their masters will allow, once in battle, a Spathi eluder is one tough cookie. I once heard a rumor, though I don't like to believe in it myself, that a rogue band of courageous Spathi broke away from the main Starfleet, painted their ships black with bright red stripes, and formed the Black Spathi Squadron, dedicated to performing brave and hostile deeds. Like I said, I'd have to see it to believe it. It's unfortunate that the Umga fell to the ur-quan so early in the war, because I suspect we would have gotten along well with those big blob creatures. At the very least, it would have been entertaining. We know them a bit better than most races because they were eager to talk with our ships before, after, and during battle. The Arilou intimated that they had a relationship with the Umga before the ur-quan arrived, but I don't know any details. What other group of aliens are you interested in? Okay, which race? The Shofixti are a race of intelligent marsupials who had been civilized for only a few decades when the war began. They were discovered in the Delta Gorno star system by the Yehat, who adopted and then uplifted the Shofixti, giving them advanced technology and cultural definition. Shofixti are noble and fearless warriors, Captain. In addition, their incredible fecundity and rapid maturation rate kept Alliance rank solid even at the worst part of the war. You know, I once flew as an observer aboard one of their ships on routine patrol. We never saw the enemy, but I could never stop thinking about the glory device it had strapped to the bottom of its hull. The Yehat are a race of ancient warrior clans that have been traveling the stars for many centuries. The clans are highly competitive and sometimes even wage war on each other, but the clans are all loyal to the Queen and her royal family, known as the Veepzeeps. The Veepzeeps have been in power for over 2,000 years, and it is said that during their rule, the Yehat never lost a battle. I'd like to think I'm not a bigoted person, Captain, especially when it comes to allies, but there's just something about those Arilou that gives me the creeps. One thing I'll say for them, though, they possess some technique for moving really fast through hyperspace. They never let us know what it was, but sure beats the pants off our fastest ships. The Chenjesu were leaders of the Alliance, even though they refused to accept formally the title. I don't know if their silicon-based biology is just plain superior to our old carbon models, or if their fantastic intellect were the product of an ancient, peaceful culture. Whatever the reason, I'd rather be taking orders from a Chenjesu than any other life form, absolutely. One of the more amazing things about them was they never used hyperwave communicators. They could send messages naturally, and their natural hyperwave receptors were much more sensitive than even our best units. We didn't really get much of a chance to learn about those mechanical beings, but I'll tell you what I know. They're the product of a distant, unknown culture who sent a giant factory arc into our region of space many centuries ago. The Mother Arc, that's what the Earth Press called it, turned out millions of robots and finally broke down. I don't know why the Myrnaherm didn't repair the Mother Arc. Maybe they can't. My personal guess as to why they were sent here is that they're on the leading edge of a colonization project. And once the Myrnaherm have tamed enough new worlds, the genuine colonists, whoever they are, will arrive and claim their due. Most raw recruits saw the Siren as nothing more than warm, breathing pin-ups. Warm they are, and yes, they do breathe most magnificently, but Captain, they are far more than simple joy units. The history shows the Siren established and maintained a peaceful culture from their Bronze Age through their discovery of starflight. Before their planet was destroyed in a horrible cataclysm, their world was an Eden. What other group of aliens are you interested in? None that we have made formal contact with. The Chenjesu implied that they had met two other star-faring species, one near the Gickless constellation and the other directly coreward from Procyon. The Arilou Lalile once mentioned having some fun with an alien race in Draconis, but like so much else with the Arilou, they never revealed the whole story. I'm sure there are hundreds more alien races in our galaxy, but beyond what I've told you, your guess is as good as mine. Would you like information on any other? We have some data on this subject. What do you want to know about? You mean besides the precursors? Well, the only information we have is secondhand based on some research by a Chenjesu historian that I read at the Academy. Servitude, the historian, found some evidence that there was a group of alien races who formed an interstellar empire not too far from here about 22,000 years ago. The only species in this empire who actually lived in our region of space was a race of rock-like creatures who lived in the Vulpeculae constellation. The presence of the hostile androsynth in that part of space severely limited Servitude's research. He never even found out the race's name. Yes, there is. Aside from the precursor relics we have found on Earth, often in museums mislabeled as modern art, we've discovered disturbing evidence of much more recent visitations. Perhaps you're already aware that during the mid to late 20th century, there were unaccountable UFO sightings as well as dozens of reported encounters with alien life forms. Although we can discount many of the reports as wishful fabrication or traumatic translation, the military authorities of the time kept a secret record of the incidents which were legitimate. In each such case, the aliens are almost identical in appearance. They have white skin and minimal facial features except for huge almond-shaped eyes, which are often described as glowing or luminescent. This description fits almost perfectly the Arilou Lalile. In most of the legitimate encounters, the people involved described being physically examined or modified by the aliens. In some cases, unusual pregnancies occurred, and in almost every instance, there were repeat visitations as though the Arilou Lalile were doing checkups on their subjects. We never got the chance to confront the Arilou Lalile about what they did to us and why. I wonder if we ever will. Hell, you probably know more about them than I do, but here goes. About 200,000 years ago, when our great-to-the-nth grandparents were just starting to play with stone knives and bearskins, a star-faring species suddenly appeared on the galactic scene and spread like wildfire. We found evidence of their presence just about everywhere, from an orbital platform on Alpha Centauri to a stack of data plates in a cave on Pluto to some nameless widget found in a voodoo shop in New Orleans. And we never found a precursor body or even a picture of one. We can conjecture what they look like by examining the scale and layout of their equipment. Such an analysis indicates they were giants, say 5 to 8 meters tall and twice as wide. I don't know if they looked more like a brontosaur or an elephant. Anyway, about 3,000 years after the precursors made their dramatic appearance, they vanished. Poof! As far as we can tell, it took less than a decade to happen. Would you like information on any other aspect of history? What about the war? Earth got involved late in the game in 2112 when the Chenjesu arrived in our solar system for the first time. So let's back up a few years to 2098 when the Chenjesu super-sensitive receivers detected a strange signal from the Ophiuchi constellation. Though even the Chenjesu didn't know it, it was the first sign of the ur-quan's arrival. The ur-quan, having detected the presence of many sentient species, were beaming out an exulting hunting cry. The first direct evidence of the ur-quan's intent was the sudden conquest of the Umga, a solitary though not unfriendly species in the Orionis constellation. The Chenjesu, distraught by the invasion, were further angered when the ur-quan turned their fleets on the hostile but weak Ilrath race. A hastily assembled defense force of Murner-Herm and Chenjesu vessels turned the ur-quan fleet aside, but the invader moved into Spathi space, rapidly subjugating that race. With each new conquest, the ur-quan fleet grew larger as it added slave vessels to its ranks. Earth joined the Chenjesu to form the Alliance of Free Stars at about the same time as the Androsynth stars fell to the ur-quan armada. Before the ink was dry on our agreement with the Chenjesu in 2116, a new race appeared in orbit around the moon and asked for admittance to the Alliance. It was the Arilou Lalile. The timing seemed unusual, and the Arilou were definitely weird, looking like saucer men from Mars, but we were too busy cranking up our mothballed heavy industry that we really didn't pay it much attention at the time. At the start of the war, here on Earth, we were working like crazy, churning out hundreds of heavy cruisers and smaller support vehicles. The ur-quan were busy too. Unbeknownst to us, they had moved down towards the Luton Star Group and were attacking the Vux, who only the Yehat knew existed. Our botched first contact with the Vux took place in 2119, and it was the biggest single mistake we made during the war. After defeating the Vux, the ur-quan fleets ran smack into the combined might of the Yehat and Shofixti, supported by the first wave of our cruisers. Again, the ur-quan turned away from the hard spot to attack the weak, though we just thought they were running away. In fact, the ur-quan had found another independent alien race, the Mycon, in the Brahe constellation. The Mycon's voluntary submission to the ur-quan brought the return of the ur-quan fleets, now swollen with 100 devastating Mycon pod ships. The last entrants to the conflict were the Cyrene, a race of space gypsies who had escaped the hierarchy by moving their vast fleet of slow-moving habitats into human space. With the side set, the last ur-quan offensive began. The ur-quan came roaring through Vux space and tried to push past the India and Mira star systems. Their onslaught was barely repulsed, and our counterattack made hardly a dent on the hierarchy forces, but we held the line. The coreward front remained intact. Over the following 10 years, there were many great battles between the combined Alliance Starfleet and the ur-quan and their hierarchy of battle thralls. Then in 2134, a dramatic shift in the balance of power took place. This must have been about the time the science research mission was sent to the planet of Vela. Our fleets were pushed back from the Indy-Mira line beyond Raynet. Holding Rigel caused grievously in Chenjesu forces, and the ur-quan, recognizing this weakness, shifted to focus the brunt of their forces on Procyon. That was the last we heard from the Chenjesu and the Murner-Herm. A few weeks later, waves of ships hit us from all directions. When Ceres Station, our outpost on the asteroid belt, fell to the hierarchy, we knew we were beaten, but we fought on anyway. 3 days later, the ur-quan vaporized our last remaining laser forts on the moon, and the dreadnoughts took up geosynchronous position above Rome, Moscow, Beijing, Tokyo, London, Buenos Aires, and Washington. We'd lost the war, and we knew it. But the ur-quan decided to make it real clear. And that's why if you check any of our most recent maps, you won't find Buenos Aires. After the UN submitted their formal surrender, we were given a week to decide the nature of our servitude. The ur-quan demanded that the decision be made through popular vote. When all the votes were tallied, Earth had chosen not to fight for the ur-quan. We had become a fallow slave world. We were given a month to withdraw all of our people and equipment to Earth. Anyone or anything left off-planet would be destroyed after the shield went up. Then the ur-quan broadcast an odd message. All objects of human construction more than 500 years old were to be abandoned. We didn't know what the ur-quan meant until they moved their dreadnoughts into new orbital positions and opened fire on the surface with their fusion weapons. In seconds, large sections of London, Paris, and other European cities were incinerated. At first, we thought they were going to annihilate us after all. And we noticed they were also striking such targets as the Giza pyramids, the Parthenon in Athens, and Stonehenge. Curiously, the United States was almost untouched. The flaming rain lasted 40 hellish hours. It took days after we crawled from our smoldering shelters to realize what the ur-quan had done. Our new masters had targeted every building, monument, or other man-made construction older than 500 years and destroyed it. In those 2 days, we lost most of the history of mankind. In some cases, the ur-quan destroyed places we did not even suspect were significant. From their positions in orbit, the dreadnoughts blew away a kilometer of land in central Iraq, vaporized several targets in the Amazon rainforest, punched a big hole through the Antarctic ice cap to destroy something deep under the surface, and melted a broad swath of the ocean floor in the southeastern Atlantic. Then, just a couple of days later, the shield went up, and our contact with the outside world stopped. The next time I saw the stars was 8 years ago, when I was transferred up here to be the new commander of this starbase. Would you like any information on any other aspect of history? Sure. Anything else? Fine. Be careful.